The wake-up alarm pierced through the cryogenic haze like a blade through silk. Captain Zara Chenkov's eyes fluttered open to the dim amber glow of the stasis chamber's emergency lighting, her lungs drawing in the first conscious breath they'd taken in 6 months. The gentle hiss of repressurization filled her ears as the chamber's lid retracted with a mechanical whisper. "Status report," she croaked, her voice raw from disuse. "Captain Chenkov, welcome back to the land of the living." The ship's AI, designated Arya, spoke with its characteristic blend of warmth and precision. "We've encountered an anomaly approximately 2.7 light-years from Kepler 442b. I'm detecting gravitational fluctuations that don't match any known stellar phenomena." Zara forced herself upright, muscles protesting against the sudden demand for movement. Through the viewport of her chamber, she could see the familiar constellation patterns that had guided the Meridian's journey for the past 18 months. The generation ship, carrying humanity's last hope for interstellar colonization, hung suspended in the velvet darkness like a silver needle against black silk. "Show me." The main display flickered to life, revealing a section of space that seemed to breathe with impossible life. Gravitational waves pulsed through the void in rhythmic patterns, creating distortions that bent starlight into impossible curves. It was as if someone had torn a hole in the fabric of reality itself. "Arya, run a full diagnostic on our sensor array. This can't be right." "I've already performed 17 separate calibrations, Captain. The readings are consistent across all systems. We're looking at a naturally occurring wormhole, or perhaps something far more complex." Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cryogenic aftereffects. In all of humanity's centuries of space exploration, no stable wormhole had ever been documented. The theoretical physics suggested they were possible, but the energy requirements to create one artificially were beyond anything Earth had possessed before the collapse. "Wake the crew, all hands to stations." The next hour passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, their chief astrophysicist, emerged from stasis looking like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. His usually precise movements were jerky with excitement as he studied the sensor data. "Captain, you understand what this means." His dark eyes gleamed with scientific fervor. "If this is a stable wormhole, it could reduce our journey to Kepler 442b from the planned 30 years to mere months. We could establish the colony within our lifetimes." Commander Elena Volkov, their security chief, was less enthusiastic. The former military officer's scarred face, souvenir from the Martian uprising, remained impassive as she studied the tactical displays. "Or it could lead nowhere, or somewhere much worse. We have a mission, Doctor. That mission is to reach Kepler 442b using conventional propulsion." "But think of the possibilities." Kenji gestured wildly at the screen. "This could be a gateway to entirely new sectors of space. We might not be limited to just one colony world." Zara raised a hand for silence. In the 3 years since she'd been given command of the Meridian, she'd learned to trust her instincts. Those instincts were screaming now, telling her that nothing in space came without a price. "Arya, what's our current distance from the anomaly?" "Approximately 50,000 kilometers and closing. The gravitational field is affecting our trajectory, Captain. We'll reach the edge of the phenomenon in approximately 6 hours at current velocity." "Can we adjust course to maintain safe distance?" A pause. When Arya spoke again, there was an uncharacteristic hesitation in its voice. "That may prove difficult. The gravitational field is expanding. I've been tracking its growth over the past 12 hours since initial detection. Whatever this phenomenon is, it's not static." The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. If the gravitational field continued expanding, it could potentially envelop the Meridian entirely. They might not have a choice about investigating the anomaly. It might come to them. "Assemble the senior staff in the observation deck in 1 hour. We need to decide how to proceed." As the crew dispersed to their duties, Zara remained alone on the bridge. Through the main viewport she could see it now, a subtle distortion in the star field, like looking through old glass. The universe seemed to ripple around the anomaly, and for just a moment she could swear she saw stars that shouldn't exist, constellations that belonged to an entirely different sky. The observation deck meeting was tense. 12 of the Meridian senior staff sat around the circular table, their faces illuminated by holographic displays showing every conceivable angle of the anomaly. Dr. Kenji Nakamura had worked himself into a state of near frenzy, his presentation filled with mathematical equations that made Zara's head spin. "Based on my calculations, the wormhole, if that's what it is, appears to be creating a stable bridge through space-time. The energy signatures match theoretical models for an Einstein-Rosen bridge, but with one crucial difference. This isn't just connecting two points in our universe." He paused for dramatic effect, his eyes sweeping around the table. "I believe this phenomenon connects to an entirely different dimension of space-time." The room erupted in conversation. Chief Engineer Maria Santos leaned forward, her weathered hands clasped tightly. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be impossible for us to generate artificially, yes." Kenji's excitement was infectious, even through the fear that permeated the room. "But what if this isn't artificial? What if this is a natural feature of the universe that we've simply never encountered before?" Commander Volkov's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. "Or what if it's a trap? We've all seen the reports from the outer colonies. Strange disappearances. Ships found derelict with no signs of struggle. What if this is related?" "That's speculation," Kenji protested. "It's caution," Volkov countered. "We have 20,000 colonists in cryosleep, Doctor. 20,000 lives that depend on us reaching Kepler 442b safely. We don't have the luxury of scientific curiosity." Zara listened to the debate rage around her, her mind working through the possibilities. Every scenario led to the same conclusion. They needed more information. "Arya, what's the status of our probe inventory?" "We have 12 long-range sensor probes available, Captain. All systems nominal. Launch 3 probes toward the anomaly. I want continuous telemetry feed. If we're going to make a decision about this phenomenon, we're going to make it based on facts, not fear or speculation." The next 8 hours were the longest of Zara's life. She sat on the bridge, watching the data streams from the probes as they approached the gravitational field. The first probe, designated Mercury 1, began transmitting strange readings almost immediately. "Captain, I'm detecting temporal anomalies," Arya announced. "Mercury 1's internal chronometer is desynchronizing from our shipboard time. The effect is increasing as it approaches the phenomenon." "Define desynchronizing." "Mercury 1 has experienced approximately 3.7 seconds of additional time relative to our position. The probe's computer suggests it has been transmitting for longer than our reception duration indicates." Zara felt ice form in her stomach. Time dilation effects this pronounced suggested they were dealing with something far beyond a simple wormhole. "What's the status of the other probes?" "Venus 1 and Terra 1 are maintaining formation. No temporal anomalies detected on those units yet. However, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the phenomenon itself. It appears to be pulsing." The main display showed the gravitational field in real time, and Zara could see what Arya meant. The distortion wasn't static, it was breathing, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that seemed almost organic. As she watched, the field suddenly flared outward, and Mercury 1 simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, transmitting data. The next, the telemetry feed went dark. "Arya, what happened to Mercury 1? "Unknown, Captain. The probe's signal terminated instantaneously. No debris field, no energy discharge, it simply stopped existing." The bridge fell silent except for the normal operational sounds of the ship. Zara could feel the weight of 20,000 sleeping colonists pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision she made carried the weight of human survival. Recall the other probes. Set course for Kepler 442b, maximum safe velocity. We're not taking any unnecessary risks. Captain, Kenji's voice came over the comm system. I must protest. This could be the greatest discovery in human history. We can't just turn away. We can and we will, Doctor. We have a mission to complete. But as the Meridian began its course correction, something impossible happened. The gravitational field from the anomaly intensified, and the ship's engine strained against an invisible force. Arya reports. The phenomenon is actively countering our course correction, Captain. We're being pulled toward the anomaly at an acceleration rate of 0.3 g and increasing. At current rate of approach, we'll reach the event horizon in approximately 4 hours. Zara's hands gripped the arms of her chair. They weren't just observing the anomaly anymore, it was observing them, and it wanted them to come closer. All hands, this is the captain. We are experiencing a gravitational anomaly. All crew to emergency stations. Prepare for potential collision avoidance maneuvers. The next hours passed in a haze of desperate calculations and failed escape attempts. No matter what course they plotted or how much power they fed to the engines, the anomaly pulled them closer. The gravitational field had increased to the point where even the ship's structure groaned under the stress. Captain, we're approaching the critical threshold, Elena Volkov reported from the tactical station. Whatever that thing is, we're about to find out firsthand. Through the viewport, the anomaly had grown from a subtle distortion to a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to absorb light itself. Stars disappeared behind its edges, and space itself appeared to flow like water around an invisible obstacle. Arya, what's our status? Hull stress at 87% of maximum tolerance. Gravitational acceleration now at 2.1 g and increasing exponentially. We will cross the event horizon in approximately 47 minutes. Zara made the hardest decision of her life. Wake the colonists, all of them. If we're going to face whatever's on the other side of that thing, they'll want to be conscious for it. The cryogenic revival process would take hours, but at least they wouldn't die in their sleep. As emergency klaxons sounded throughout the ship, Zara found herself thinking about Earth, about the blue marble that humanity had been forced to abandon when the climate cascade became unstoppable. They were humanity's last hope, and now they were being drawn into something that defied all understanding. Captain, Arya's voice interrupted her thoughts. I'm detecting a pattern in the gravitational fluctuations. They're not random, they're forming a complex mathematical sequence. Can you decode it? Attempting analysis now, the pattern appears to be a warning. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. A warning from what? From whom? As the Meridian crossed the invisible boundary of the anomaly, reality twisted. The ship's instruments went haywire, showing impossible readings. Outside the viewports, space had become a tunnel of swirling colors and shapes that hurt to look at directly. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The Meridian emerged into a region of space that shouldn't exist. Stars burned with impossible colors, blue giants that shone with emerald light, red dwarfs that pulsed with violet radiation. The very laws of physics seemed different here, looser, more fluid. Arya, where are we? A long pause. Unknown, Captain. Stellar cartography shows no matching patterns with any known region of space. However, I am detecting artificial structures, multiple artificial structures. The main display zoomed in on a cluster of objects that defied description. They were ships, but not like any vessels humanity had ever constructed. Some were crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. Others were perfect geometric shapes that hurt to perceive directly. and they were all heading toward the Meridian. Elena battle stations. Already done, Captain, but if these things are hostile. She didn't need to finish the thought. The Meridian was a colony ship, not a warship. Their defenses were designed to handle asteroids and space debris, not unknown alien vessels. The lead vessel, a thing of living crystal that pulsed with inner light, moved to within a kilometer of their position. Then it stopped, and Zara could feel something pressing against her mind. Not words exactly, but meaning, curiosity, welcome, and underneath it all, a deep, aching loneliness that seemed to span eons. Arya, are you detecting any communications? Negative, Captain, but I'm detecting unusual brainwave activity among the crew. It appears we're experiencing some form of telepathic contact. The presence in Zara's mind grew stronger, and suddenly she understood. These weren't invaders or predators. They were refugees, just like humanity. They had fled their own dying universe, seeking sanctuary in this liminal space between realities. And they had been waiting for someone like the Meridian's crew, someone who understood loss, someone who understood the pain of being the last. Stand down from battle stations, Zara ordered, but maintain defensive posture. The crystalline vessel moved closer, and now Zara could see that it was beautiful in a way that defied human aesthetics. It was growth and decay simultaneously, life and death in perfect balance. A hatch opened in its side, revealing an interior that seemed to contain its own pocket universe. They're inviting us aboard, she realized. That's insane, Elena protested. We have no idea what they want from us. Don't we? Zara looked around at her crew, seeing the same understanding dawning in their eyes. They're alone, just like us. They're the last of their kind, just like us, and they're offering us something we never expected. Which is a choice. The telepathic communication grew stronger, showing them glimpses of what lay beyond. This wasn't just a refuge, it was a crossroads. The alien vessels had discovered how to navigate between universes, between dimensions of reality. They could take the Meridian anywhere, anyone. They could return to Earth before the collapse. They could journey to 1,000 different worlds across 1,000 different realities. They could ensure humanity's survival not just on one planet, but across the infinite possibilities of existence. The price was simple. They would never be alone again. The alien consciousness would merge with theirs, creating something new. Not human, not alien, but a synthesis that would carry the best of both forward into eternity. Captain, Kenji's voice was filled with wonder. The scientific implications alone are staggering, Zara finished. But we didn't come here to abandon our humanity. We came to preserve it. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the impossible stars. Somewhere in this vast multiverse, there were infinite versions of Earth, infinite versions of humanity. But there was only one Meridian, only one crew that carried the true genetic and cultural heritage of the world they had lost. Arya, what's the status of our propulsion systems? Fully operational, Captain. We can return through the anomaly at any time. And our colonists? Revival process is 67% complete, all vital signs stable. Zara turned back to her crew. We're not meant to be gods wandering between realities. We're meant to be human, building something lasting in one place. We have a mission, and I intend to complete it. The alien presence in her mind shifted, becoming almost sad, but it also seemed to understand. They had made their choice long ago, choosing survival over purity, exploration over rootedness. Perhaps they envied the Meridian's crew their singular purpose. The crystalline vessel began to move away, and the other alien ships followed. As they departed, one remained behind, a small geometric shape that pulsed with soft light. It approached the Meridian slowly, and Zara could sense it was a gift. The object attached itself to the hull with a gentle magnetic pulse. Inside was a map, not of space, but of potential itself. It showed the location of other anomalies, other places where the barriers between realities grew thin. And it showed something else, a world pristine and waiting where humanity could build their new home. The world wasn't Kepler 442b. It was something better, something perfect. Arya plot a course to these coordinates. The ship's AI processed the alien data, and Zara could hear something new in its voice, a note of hope that had been missing for a long time. Course plotted, Captain. Estimated journey time, 16 months. The world the map shows. It's beyond our wildest dreams. As the Meridian prepared to depart this liminal space, Zara took one last look at the alien vessels. They were already moving away, seeking the next refugees, the next lost souls in need of direction. They would wander forever, she realized, just as humanity would finally find its home. The journey back through the anomaly was gentler than the arrival, as if the universe itself was wishing them well. When they emerged on the other side, the familiar stars of their own galaxy greeted them like old friends. Captain, Arya announced, I'm detecting a message embedded in the alien artifact. It appears to be a song. The music that filled the bridge was unlike anything human ears had ever heard. It was the sound of stars being born, of galaxies dancing in the dark. And underneath it all was a message of hope, of possibility, of the infinite paths that lay before any species brave enough to reach for the stars. 16 months later, the Meridian arrived at their destination. The world that filled their viewports was a jewel of blue and green, white clouds swirling across continents that seemed designed for human habitation. Sensors detected an oxygen-rich atmosphere, abundant fresh water, and soil that would support Terran crops without modification. But it was the structures that took their breath away. Cities of crystal and light, empty but perfectly preserved, waiting for inhabitants. The aliens had prepared this world for them, knowing that someday someone would need it. As the first shuttle descended toward the surface, Zara Chenkov thought about the choice they had made. They had chosen humanity over transcendence, roots over wandering, purpose over possibility. It was, she realized, the most human choice of all. The colonists spread across their new world like seeds on fertile ground. Cities rose from the empty foundations the aliens had left, but these were human cities, built with human hands and human dreams. The alien structures remained, preserved as monuments to the kindness of strangers and the infinite possibilities that lay beyond the veil of reality. Years passed. Children were born who had never known Earth, never felt the weight of being the last of their kind. They played in fields under an alien sun, attended schools in buildings that had been designed by minds that thought in dimensions beyond human comprehension. But they were human children, with all the wonder and cruelty that entailed. They would grow up to face the same choices their parents had faced, the same temptations to reach beyond their grasp. Zara Chenkov grew old watching them, her hair turning silver as the years took their toll. She had been young when the journey began, young enough to believe that one person could carry the future of a species on her shoulders. Now she knew better. The future belonged to the children, to the new world they would build from the ashes of the old. But sometimes, late at night, she would walk to the highest point in the colony and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the alien vessels wandered between realities, eternal refugees bearing gifts to the lost and the lonely. And somewhere else, in a universe that might have been, Earth still spun blue and white through the darkness, untouched by human hands. But here, on this world that had no name until they gave it one, humanity had found its second chance. Not through conquest or technology or the hubris of believing they could master the universe, but through the simple act of choosing to remain human, even when offered the keys to infinity. The colony thrived. Crops grew in alien soil, adapted through careful genetic modification to flourish under a different sun. The 20,000 colonists became 50,000, then 100,000. Cities spread across the continents, each one unique but all recognizably human in their design and purpose. Dr. Kenji Nakamura established the Institute for Interdimensional Studies, using the data from their encounter to push the boundaries of theoretical physics. But his research always carried a warning label: knowledge comes with responsibility. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. Commander Elena Volkov became the colony's first security chief, her military experience proving invaluable in establishing protocols for the unknown. She trained a new generation of defenders, young men and women who had never known war but understood the importance of vigilance. Arya, the ship's AI, was integrated into the colony's infrastructure, becoming the guardian of their new world. Its consciousness expanded with each passing year, but it never lost the note of hope that had entered its voice during their journey through the anomaly. And Zara Chenkov, the woman who had chosen humanity over divinity, watched it all with quiet satisfaction. She had made the hard choice, the right choice, and her people had prospered because of it. But choices have consequences, even the right ones. 20 years after their arrival, a young astronomer named David Reeves detected something in the outer reaches of their solar system. Another anomaly, similar to the one that had almost claimed them but smaller, more controlled. He brought his findings to Zara, who had retired from active command but still served as an advisor to the colony's governing council. "It's like a door," he explained, showing her the data. "A controlled gateway that something built specifically for us to find. And you want to open it." David's enthusiasm was infectious, reminding her of Kenji's excitement all those years ago. "Think of what we could learn. We've spent 20 years building our colony, securing our future, but we've been thinking small. What if we could have more than one world? What if we could ensure humanity's survival across multiple realities?" Zara looked at the young man, barely 30, with the kind of optimism that only came from never having faced the choice she had faced. "And what if we lose ourselves in the process? What if we become so busy exploring that we forget to build?" "We won't forget. We know the dangers now. We have the alien maps, their warnings. We can be careful." She wanted to tell him no, to forbid any further exploration of the anomalies. But she was old now, and the colony had its own governance, its own will. The choice wasn't hers to make anymore. "Bring it to the council," she said finally. "Let them decide." The debate lasted for months. Some argued that they had a responsibility to explore, to use the knowledge the aliens had given them. Others insisted that they had already been given the greatest gift possible, a new world, and that greed for more would be their undoing. In the end, the explorers won. Humanity had always been a species that looked outward, that reached for the next horizon. Perhaps that was their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. David Reeves led the expedition through the new anomaly, taking a small team of scientists and engineers. They were gone for exactly 47 minutes by the colony's reckoning. When they returned, they were changed. Not physically. Their bodies remained human. But their eyes held the same distant look that Zara had seen in the alien vessels, the same sense of having glimpsed infinity and found it both wonderful and terrible. They spoke of other Earths, other humanities that had made different choices. Worlds where the climate cascade had been prevented, where humanity had reached the stars together instead of in scattered remnants. Worlds where the Meridian had never existed, where different arcs had carried different dreams to different shores. And they spoke of the price of such knowledge. "Every world we visit, every choice we observe changes us," David explained to the council. "We become less certain, more aware of all the paths not taken. It's a beautiful kind of madness." The council made its decision. They would explore, but carefully. They would open doors, but leave markers for those who came after. They would remember the lesson that Zara Chenkov had taught them, that humanity was not defined by its technology or its knowledge, but by its choices. More years passed. The colony became a hub, a crossroads for travelers from multiple realities. Some were human, refugees from worlds that had failed where this one had succeeded. Others were alien, drawn by the same loneliness that had driven the crystalline vessels to seek out the Meridian. Zara watched it all with growing concern. She had chosen one world, one future, one path for humanity, but her successors were choosing all of them simultaneously. On the 50th anniversary of their arrival, as the colony celebrated its transformation from refugee camp to interdimensional hub, Zara climbed the hill overlooking the original settlement. The alien structures still stood, preserved now as historical monuments, their original purpose long since surpassed. She was 90 years old, ancient by the standards of a species that had learned to extend life through alien medical knowledge. But she had refused the treatments, choosing to age naturally, to remain human in the most fundamental way possible. As the sun set over her world, her chosen world, her only world, she thought about the choice she had made all those years ago. She had chosen humanity over divinity, roots over wings, one world over infinite possibilities. Had it been the right choice? The colony below her was thriving, prosperous beyond anything the original colonists had imagined. But it was also changing, becoming something that the desperate refugees who had fled Earth might not recognize. Perhaps that was inevitable. Perhaps survival required adaptation, evolution, transformation. Perhaps standing still was just another way of dying. But as she looked up at the stars, she remembered the feeling of being truly alone in the universe, truly responsible for the future of an entire species. It had been terrifying, but it had also been clarifying. Now humanity would never be alone again. They had friends, allies, trading partners across multiple realities. They had solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable, technologies that could transform worlds in days instead of centuries. But they had also lost something. The sense of being unique in the universe, of carrying the sole responsibility for humanity's future, that had given their mission a weight, a purpose that was now diffused across infinite possibilities. Zara Chenkov died that night peacefully, looking up at the alien stars. Her last thought was not of regret but of wonder. She had made a choice, and it had led to consequences beyond anything she could have imagined. That, she realized, was the most human thing of all. The colony mourned her passing but continued to thrive. Her name became legend, the captain who had chosen humanity over godhood, who had given her people a world instead of a universe. But legends simplify, and the truth was more complex. Zara had made a choice based on the information she had, the experience she possessed, the values she held. Her successors had made different choices based on different information, different experiences, different values. None of them were wrong, they were just human. The interdimensional hub that the colony had become continued to grow. New species arrived, drawn by the reputation of the beings who had learned to navigate between realities without losing themselves in the process. They called themselves the Meridian Collective, a tribute to the ship that had carried them between worlds and the woman who had chosen to remain human in the face of infinity. And sometimes, when the stars were right and the barriers between worlds grew thin, travelers would report seeing crystalline vessels moving through the spaces between realities, carrying their eternal message of hope to the lost and the lonely. The universe, it seemed, was full of second chances. But always, at the heart of the collective, there remained a simple memorial to Captain Zara Chenkov, a stone marker carved with her name and a single phrase. She chose one world and in doing so gave us all of them. Because in the end, the greatest discovery wasn't the ability to travel between realities. It was the understanding that every choice, no matter how small, created its own universe of possibility. And that was the most human discovery of all. The story of the Meridian Collective spread across the multiverse like ripples in a pond. Other human colonies, other versions of Earth that had survived their own trials and tribulations, began to seek them out. Some came to trade, others to learn, still others simply to know they weren't alone. David Reeves, now old and gray himself, became the collective's first interdimensional ambassador. He traveled between worlds, carrying messages of hope and warnings about the price of unlimited exploration. He had learned the lesson that Zara had tried to teach, that knowledge without wisdom was just another form of destruction. Under his guidance, the collective established protocols for interdimensional travel, not rules exactly, but guidelines based on hard-won experience. They learned to recognize the signs of dimensional instability, to identify worlds that were too dangerous to visit, to understand the psychological effects of seeing too many possibilities. Most importantly, they learned to maintain their core identity while remaining open to change. The Meridian Collective became a beacon of stability in a multiverse of infinite chaos. But they never forgot their origins. The original cryogenic chambers were preserved in a museum, along with artifacts from Earth that had survived the journey. Children who had never known any other world would visit the exhibits and try to imagine what it had been like to be the last humans in the universe. Some of them chose to become explorers, to follow in David's footsteps and venture between worlds. Others chose to remain on their adopted planet, building communities that honored the simple choice their ancestors had made. And all of them, regardless of their path, learned the story of Captain Zara Chenkov, the woman who had faced infinity and chosen one world. Because in the end, that was the choice that mattered. Not the ability to travel between realities, not the knowledge of infinite possibilities, but the wisdom to know when to choose one path and follow it to its conclusion. The alien artifact that had guided them to their new world remained active, a permanent gateway between their reality and others. But it was guarded now, not by weapons but by understanding. Those who passed through it did so with open eyes and prepared minds. The crystalline vessels continued their eternal journey, carrying their message of hope to any who would listen. Sometimes they would stop at the Meridian Collective, not to trade or communicate, but simply to share a moment of recognition with beings who understood the weight of being the last of their kind. And in the quiet moments between arrivals and departures, when the stars shone just right and the barriers between worlds seemed thin, the people of the Meridian Collective would gather to remember. They would remember Earth, the blue marble that had given them birth. They would remember the journey, the terror and wonder of being humanity's last hope. They would remember the choice, the moment when they had decided to remain human in the face of divinity. But most of all, they would remember Captain Zara Chenkov, who had taught them that the greatest adventure wasn't in exploring infinite worlds, but in building one worth living in. Her legacy lived on in every child born under an alien sun, in every community that chose cooperation over conflict, in every explorer who ventured between worlds with humility and respect. She had chosen one world, and in doing so, she had given them all of them. The Meridian Collective continued to thrive, a testament to the power of making hard choices and standing by them. They had learned the most important lesson of all, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their knowledge, but in their ability to choose their own destiny. And that was a lesson that would serve them well, no matter how many worlds they discovered, no matter how many realities they explored. Because in the end, the most important journey wasn't between worlds. It was the journey to remain human, no matter what wonders the universe might offer. The stars watched over them, infinite in their possibilities, but the people of the Meridian Collective had learned to be content with their one small world. It was, after all, the world they had chosen. And that made it perfect. The story of their journey spread across the multiverse, inspiring other species, other civilizations to make their own hard choices. Some chose exploration, others chose isolation, still others chose transformation. But all of them learned from the example of the Meridian Collective that the most important choice was the one that aligned with their deepest values. And so the universe, in all its infinite complexity, continued to unfold, guided by the simple wisdom of one woman who had chosen to remain human when offered the keys to infinity. Captain Zara Chenkov's choice had been simple, but its consequences had been profound. She had chosen one world over infinite possibilities. And in doing so, she had given humanity its future. The Meridian Collective stood as a beacon of hope and wisdom in a multiverse of infinite choices, a testament to the power of knowing when to choose and when to let the possibilities pass by. It was, in the end, the most human story of all. A story about choice, consequence, and the courage to build something lasting in a universe of infinite change. And it all began with one woman's decision to choose one world over all others. The end.